if you go find the beauty of it, that the thing that got you to pick up that camera in the first place, nobody else will do that for you. It's really important that you go find that for yourself. And if you do, then there's no shelf life on this for people.
Sound the overused word alert. I think you'll find the show goes on a real journey today. It's a real start, middle and end journey. But before we even get started, lend me your ears for 50 seconds or so. Clean your lug holes out, as my mum used to say. Although this really is a message for those who download every Friday and heard me announce what was happening this week, last week, as it were. If you're routinely 3 or more weeks behind, you can go make a cup of tea and liberate a Garibaldi from its packet for a few moments, because it won't make a jot of difference to you. Right then, slight change of plans for this week's episode. It was due to be one of my walking and talking episodes, one with Chris Floyd, the British photographer and filmmaker, as we walked in countryside near his home in Oxfordshire. We've done that show. It's sat there in the can, as they say, ready for release. And it would have been playing out today, but for one modestly sized, but nevertheless important detail. One of the stories he tells is about a photography job he recently shot with one of the most famous men on this planet. And it's still a little hush-hush. It's not that there's any great secret around it, but there is an unofficial sort of embargo in terms of where the picture is headed. Now, as you hear these words, if you do listen on the day of normal release, I will be travelling back from Paris. Oh, get you, Neil, you jet-setter you. So I needed an episode sans l'embargo, as my terrible French goes. And this one you're listening to today got bumped up the order so I could head out to photograph in the city of romance. Sans le frison d'obseteur, le chariot de pomme, Rodney. So yes, we in the boardroom at Photo Walk Towers, that's me and Sir Barkalot, made an exec decision and shifted our episodes around slightly. And actually it's worked out perfectly, because if ever there was a time I needed calm reassurance about the planet and the people, it's this week and today. I'll tell you who our wonderful, inspiring guest for this episode is in a moment then, but next week will be the Chris Floyd episode, when hopefully we'll have le go-go signal on Viet. No more French, Neil. No more French. And then the week after, our special on imposter syndrome with my guest, Sean Tucker. So that one's moved slightly, which means you have more time to get your thoughts about imposter syndrome and that list of well, I was going to say conditions, but you know what I mean, which was in last week's newsletter, to get your thoughts in for that show that Sean can discuss with me and perhaps answer questions that you may have for him. So, housekeeping done. You can come out from your hiding places and welcome back into the room all those who slipped off to dunk their Garibaldi into a cup of Darjeeling. And let me tell you about today's very special episode. Our good friend of the show from Canada, the amazing wildlife photographer Michelle Valberg, suggested the last time that we talked, because she's been on a couple of times now, that I have a chat with a friend of hers, also from Canada, Jacquie Matechuk, who was for many years and still is one of the country's leading motorsport photographers. But as the world stopped turning in 2020 for many businesses, Jacquie was, I think the word is forced to rethink her photographic business and her photographic passions. Now, at the tail end of last week, I sat down at my end of a cup, joined by a huge transatlantic string, joined to Jacquie's cup in Canada. We pulled the string taut and recorded the interview in 3 parts that you're about to hear today. And for the kids who've never grown up talking through cups with taut string between them, oh, have you missed out? Have we, Neil? Really? We've got mobile phones, Grandad. Anyway, we ended up having a chat about her extraordinary photographic transition from one discipline to another, from motorsport to wildlife. Although there are factors that really mean that the two of them, the two disciplines, talk to each other very well. But it's a transition that's seen her win some of the most coveted awards. She's travelled far and wide to destinations she'd never thought could happen, come face to face with huge bears, learned how to charge back at them, if need be, actually, stared into the eyes of a silverback, who then just sauntered over and gave her a sort of shoulder nudge. I'm here, kind of shoulder nudge. She's had conversations with an owl, she's tracked polar bears. It all comes out in our conversation today. But also, and I think this is one of the most important parts of our discussion today, Jacquie has, I think, revealed a true why of photography. And if I could make a fender or bumper sticker large enough, she's going to share some words with you during our conversation today that would be perfect for that sticker. And it'll have you thinking differently about life behind a lens, or maybe have you nodding with such enthusiastic agreement and vigour, you'll get a sense of whiplash in the process. You know that thing said to us by people on stages, making important presentations, i.e. the bit where they say, if you learn one thing today, just one thing, then it will have been worth the investment of your time, etc., etc., et al. Well, I think this is really one of those chats. Except for the fact I think there are not just one, but many things that you'll feel all the richer for learning from Jacquie's incredible sharings, such as how from adversity, opportunity can blossom, how you can reinvent and repopulate your passion for something, even after a lifetime's career that was somewhat on a different path. How photography is a wonderful way to connect, not just with people, and how inspiring people in the short time we're gifted this passport to planet Earth can be one of the greatest gifts you can bring or offer. My list could go on and on. Look, suffice to say, I think this is an uplifting story about a fabulous human and how photography feeds her soul. And you know, I'm going to embrace the fact that sounds fabulously woo-woo, because it's just at a time where if you have one eye on the news, you might feel like me, just a little exhausted. I certainly came away from my discussion with Jacquie feeling like I'd had an hour's wonderful Indian head massage. I'd like you to meet somebody who's making a real difference to the world through her message, through her photographs, her work and her nurturing of the next generation of photographers.
Today on the Photo Walk.
I have sat in the seat for sure. I've gone through the challenges and the injuries and the excitement and the heartbreak and you name it. And I think for me, that's why sports mattered so much, is because you can relate so well. And the difference was the proximity. I mean, you were surrounded by bears, mums, cubs, males. It didn't matter. They were everywhere and you're on the ground with them. The more intense the moment, the more you have to fight your instincts, your natural instincts to be alarmed or to be reactive, including a charge. If you're bluff charged by a bear, you need to stand your ground. Like, I never try and think about, did I get the shot as far as, the right lighting and the technical components. For me, it's, did I get the shot that visualizes what I feel?
That's Jacquie Matechuk, my guest on the show today. Welcome along as we make our photo walks together, a show where we walk and make pictures, photographically sketchbooking our time together each week, enjoying the letters and inspirational stories you send in across the year and listening back to special studio conversations with guests from around the world. And thank you to those who believe in this podcast enough that you're Patreon members, or extra milers as I know you by, many of you personally now too. And also to MPB, who sponsor this show. MPB is a place where you can go to buy, sell and trade your used photo and video gear. They do make gear more accessible, they do make gear more affordable. And I've been asking you for a couple of weeks now, but do you have some camera gear in your life that you're not using? Because if you do, it could become new to them gear in somebody else's life, making you some money along the way, which is never a bad thing. It's very easy to do. You just go to mpb.com. At the top of the website page, click on Start Selling and Trading, and then follow the simple instructions, which all leads to an instant quote, which if you're happy with, you accept, you print off a label, you stick it on a box with your gear inside, of course, and a delivery driver will come and collect it from your front door with a smiley face and happy demeanour, as many of them do. Once MPB receive your box and check what you sent, you get paid nice and quickly into your account. You can, of course, buy camera gear too. There's a huge amount to choose from because MPB recirculate, say the number with me, 570,000 cameras, lenses and accessories a year. So if you're in the UK, the US or Europe, buy, sell and trade used camera gear with MPB. Oh, and a bonus reason why I love to use them personally. I like the fact that if you have a question or problem, that MPB provides first-class customer service. You can get help from the help centre or by speaking with an expert over the phone or via live chat. Not a real person, Neil, surely? Yes, a real person, and don't call me Shirley. 3 points for the first to write in with the name of the classic film that comes from. Go to mpb.com. So, let us return to the show in a couple of weeks' time as we enjoy 2 weeks of deeper dive conversations with my guests. But please keep sending them in. We have a long winter ahead of us. It being the first Friday of the month, it's New Assignment Week, a challenge for a picture Lynn Fraser would like you to make at some stage over the next month. But not just Lynn. Actually, and as a complete coincidence, my guest this week, Jacquie Matechuk, chose the very same one word for the assignment. So, actually, I'd like them both to appear side by side when we set the challenge later on. Right, shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. Walking boots or shoes, check. SD cards or a spare roll of film, check. Plus a notepad for all the wonderful inspirational thoughts today from my guest. Check. Let's walk. I'm very inspired. I know I've said this a few times now. Neil, you're not going to use the M word, are you? Oh, you've read my mind. I'm very inspired to do that episode on macro. Because when you get to, well, I'm in the UK, so it's not the same weather everywhere in the world, but those mornings where you get dew on the grass and the leaves, I think a macro episode, this is the perfect time, I think. Anyway, you're an important part of this show, you are, your letters and your thoughts. It gives our community a real uniqueness, together with finding escapism and peace away from the noise of this world, putting miles under our feet and making a picture or two to remind us of where those footprints were left. If you have a picture or a letter to send in and are nudged by anything that you hear on today's show, I would love to hear from you. The email address is stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. If you're sending pictures in, if you're able to, if you can resize them to 2,500 pixels wide, then that would really aid the process of popping them on in an optimized fashion on the show page. If you can't, don't worry, I will do the heavy lifting. I've split our studio conversation into 3 while we walk and listen together. And in between each part, just a few words about Scotland and also the new assignment. And plus news of the extra mile, which has also been bumped forward by a week. But I will just ask you this question for the moment. Imagine what you might feel like if you lost 25 years of your latest, well, I say latest, of your digital archive. Gone, as it were. Gone in 60 seconds. More to come on that in a while. So now, for over 23 years, Jacquie Matechuk has built a reputation for capturing those perfect in-between moments that really tell the story of her subjects, their journeys, their successes, their experiences. She has a natural love for storytelling. I'd say that her goal seems simply this, though it's somewhat more complex. I can see Jacquie looking over her glasses at me. To create pictures that spark thought and evoke emotions that we can all relate to. What did the great Don McCullin say? Photography is about feeling, not looking. And that if you can't feel what you're looking at, you won't be able to make others feel anything when they see your photos. You'll certainly hear that thought surface today. In Jacquie's own words, she believes our connection to the natural world shows just how much we rely on the health and biodiversity of our planet. As creatives, it's on us to produce content that resonates with people who may never get to experience these places and things firsthand. Today, as a Canon Canada ambassador, Jacquie loves to pass on her passion for photography, mentoring other creators, other photographers on how to grow their skills and nurture their craft. You might find her guiding a small group along the Canadian coastline or collaborating with the Canadian Conservation Photographers Collective to support organisations fighting to protect our planet's natural treasures. Or you might just find her along a path, making photographs because she genuinely loves being in nature. Here is my chat with Jacquie Matechuk, part 1. Jacquie, I was so looking forward to asking a wildlife photographer the classic chicken and egg question, i.e. did the animals speak to you first or the camera? But it seems I can't really, because for you, it was motorsport that was your original muse, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, it definitely was.
You got into photographing motorsport through being involved in it, but not photographically.
Correct. I was actually working on one of the factory racing teams for the Canadian Superbike Championships. And as it turned out, the team was growing and we had more people coming on. So everybody's responsibilities became more defined and limited, and that provided more time for me at the track. And I don't do well sitting still. So I moseyed on over to where the photographers were because I really did respect what I was seeing. It was neat to look back at the end of the weekend and see what they captured and to see the fan base really enjoy it. So I went and tapped on their shoulder, and they found a gentleman in particular that was incredibly generous and shared lots of great advice and welcomed me kind of into that community, and went and bought the best lens I could afford and the cheapest camera to open the door up, and away I went.
My youngest is doing what we call GCSE, which is one of our exam boards. He's doing photography, which I'm delighted about. And that was my advice to him straight away is don't worry about the camera, worry about the glass. And I know that's something I've seen you speak on Canon videos where that's been your mantra, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it held true. It proved itself. And I kept that first lens for, I think I used that for probably a good solid 16 years before I needed to upgrade that lens. And it was fantastic. Great advice.
Yeah. Who was that person then that was so generous with his time? I often find that photographers, we're a generous lot, I think. In the main, I think. People are quite keen to give advice. I don't hold with that thought that people are incredibly protective. I don't think they are. I think, and actually, the higher up the scale you go with photographers, I've found, the more generous and giving they are with their time and advice.
And it's interesting to see how there's a bit of a shift from genre to genre. So as you get into a field like sports photography and you're competing for very limited access to a certain event or caliber of event, it is very much every man or person for themselves and pretty cutthroat. I mean, I didn't know any better at the time. And it wasn't until I progressed a little bit through the ranks that I realized you're kind of on your own because nobody wants to help their competitor. But that was a very different atmosphere than something like nature and wildlife photography, for sure.
I do get to ask a question that's properly on behalf of a friend of my teenage boys. So excuse me while I indulge the privilege of having you on the line, that I can ask a question like this about motorsport before we move on to the wildlife. We have our son has a friend who's 17. He's been photographing motorsport for a couple of years. When the chances occur, his dad takes him to a track and he gets involved as much as he can and as much as he's allowed to get close to the action. So he's thinking right now of going to university, Jacquie, because that will broaden his photographic outlook, I know. But I know motorsport right now is something, if somebody said to him, all right, come and be my assistant for 3 years, what would be your advice?
Oh, unfortunately, I'm probably not a great parent to ask this to. My advice is always to follow your heart. I mean, he can go back to school at any point, but something like that, an opportunity to study under mentorship that you value is a very rare opportunity. And I think that's regardless of what field you're in. And it's something that, you need to say, I think you need to say yes to. You need to embrace that. You're going to develop some world experience, which you have to build, your skills upon. And I think the more you go through, the more you experience in life, to the point that even our personal challenges that we go through, the deeper and darker those are, the more it drums up who we are as, our character and how we see the world and our perspective on life. And I think those are valuable tools down the road once you learn how to use them to your advantage. So I would tell him to go for it.
Well, he hasn't got the mentor yet, but if he had one, that might be the path that he should take. You've raced dirt bikes, haven't you?
Oh, wow.
So you're not somebody who's just stood by the track and watched and been part of a team that prepares people. You've done it. You've sat in the seat.
I have sat in the seat for sure. I've gone through the challenges and the injuries and the excitement and the heartbreak and you name it. And I think for me, that's why sports mattered so much, is because you can relate so well to what you're seeing on the track, to what the teams are going through and the athletes are going through. And when I started my photography in the sports arena, that's where the images were coming in so different from what the manufacturers had seen so far. It was all about high-speed action and, the sponsor logos, that type of thing. But I was getting the things behind the scenes, like, that intense moment before the rider gets on his bike and he's just focused and deadlock serious, or, their spouses who, have their hands, can't breathe, hands over their mouths, just praying, that they come back in one piece, like that intensity, which I felt. So it was easy to relate to and easy to spot.
The reason you felt that as well is because your husband's a racer as well. And
he is.
So you know what that feeling is like. As he will have had the same feeling watching you, I'm sure.
Actually, I met him down the road. So I had been married for about 8 years.
Right.
My original husband had raced dirt bikes, which is how I started racing dirt bikes. I had a little boy, and then we ended up separating, but I met another gentleman down the road, and he actually ended up being a road racer. Yeah. So he was on the street bikes, and as it turned out, everybody in the house was riding and competing, and obviously that carried on to my son, who went pretty far with it and has made it a career.
I'm intrigued to know now, but because this move to wildlife has happened, that doesn't mean you've stopped doing sports at all, though, does it? You're still photographing sport. It's still,
I am.
But there's a sort of two-pronged approach to your photography now. Does one help the other, or are they so far removed as, they are totally different disciplines?
They absolutely help one another to a degree I never expected. And I didn't realize there'd be that many similarities between the two, which is why I think I fell in love with the wildlife side of things so quickly. I still found all of the challenges as far as, the things you can't control and the things you have to just roll with punches when you're in the field because something goes wrong or the conditions change too quick or something fogs up or breaks, and you're just constantly reacting and pivoting and trying to keep yourself in the moment. And everything I thought I had to walk away from when unfortunately COVID hit on the sports side, I found in this other world. And it's been a great blend.
I suppose as many people found over that time, whether they were photographing it or not, wildlife and nature became a life raft, and for you, a new career.
100%. I didn't go looking for it. It just seemed to find me, which I'm incredibly grateful for. But all the contracts stopped overnight with the headlines. Yeah. Everything was done. No more travel, no more bookings. And I really went into this momentary panic about what am I going to do? I just started building the business up and gaining momentum. And I was just shell shocked. And with everything shutting down, I went to a local camera club here in town, met a couple of gals there. We started to get along really well. One was a nature photographer, one was more wildlife birds photographer, and we started to hang out. They invited me to go out with them, and we have some great wildlife opportunities nearby, and I really was starting to enjoy it. So that's how it all began.
Yeah, it's incredible because within a very short amount of time, you've won major awards, which I want to come to. And you've been widely recognised for your wildlife photography. Canon support you. It's been incredible, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been one of the
upward trajectory very quickly.
Swift ride up. Yeah, lots to be thankful for, and lots of people to thank for it.
I would imagine the patience levels to make photographs in the wild, though are to coin a phrase, wildly different, aren't they? Or is there a similarity there as well? I don't know.
I think there's a ton of similarity. One of the things I think I've learned and that transported really nicely from the sports side of things is to just constantly be staying engaged with what's happening, even if you're not photographing. You can see relationships develop. You can see battles, intensity. You see what's happening with the pit. You start to, the pit crew and how intense they're getting. So you start to feel what's going to happen before it happens quite often. You're just locked into the moment. And I think the same thing happens when you're in the wild. There's not too many times I put my camera down, and it's not because I'm photographing. It's because I'm learning the whole time. Every movement they make, every gesture, there's so much to learn from what they're doing, and I'm just enamored by it.
I've spoken to a few wildlife photographers now who've all mooted. They've all said most of the job is understanding the animal, not necessarily the camera. It's understanding what they do, when they're likely to do it. And I'm sure you've found that. Had you always had that interest in wildlife that's enabled you to be so? Because when I look at your pictures, you look entirely in tune with what you're photographing.
Yeah, I wish I had. I would do anything to go back and start this 25 years ago. Unfortunately, I don't think I did. For me, I found that passion in motorsports and in extreme sports, but it was the same concept. The more I knew about the sport, and in particular about the athletes and their struggles and their challenges, what they were going through, what they were coming back from, what they had on the line, the better I became as a photographer, because I saw and understood a different level of what they were going through. So where somebody would just see someone staring off in the distance, I felt what that was. I understood that this was the last chance to make a career out of what they were doing. And that intensity was something that, people in the industry also understood and saw. And I think that's what kind of gave me a foot in the door.
I mean, you live in a beautiful part of the world, and with immense opportunities to be able to go and photograph. Well, I'm thinking of bears immediately, these beautiful pictures you make of bears. But I'm sure that's not how you started with wildlife. I mean, it seems like the very top of the division when you're facing a bear and it's looking you square in the eyes, and you're thinking, right, who's going to blink first?
It's actually also a very steep trajectory. We had done, these girls I had met here in town. We had done some just local things with owls and moose and deer and elk and whatever else we could find around home. And I met a gentleman that was offering a tour to go to Churchill and photograph polar bears. And the three of us chatted about it, and we hadn't traveled yet together. Well, we had done one little trip. We decided to go ahead and invest in this adventure, and only two of us could actually make it to the location, but we went there, and that was a really pivotal experience for me. The first time I was able to look through a lens and feel like I was unbelievably connected to what I was seeing, and it won me over. And we got back, and he had mentioned that he was thinking about doing a trip into Alaska as well. And then I saw some of the pictures, and the difference was the proximity. I mean, you were surrounded by bears, mums, cubs, males. It didn't matter. They were everywhere, and you're on the ground with them. And when I saw that, I mean, my heart skipped a jump, and the first thing I said was yes. When? And I decided to go out. I think it was about a month later, because this was almost a full year away. I decided to research and see what I could do to become better at knowing my subject. And I found the Canadian Bear Viewing Association and went out to BC, and I took my bear guiding course and had that before I had even really been on the ground with a bear. So
yeah, well, a bear guiding course. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, it's the only one that I could see that covered off the in-depth knowledge I would have wanted if I was going into that situation. And it was a matter of going there with a few other photographers. And I wanted to know if the things I was doing was going to be okay, or am I going to upset the animal? Am I going to behave in such a way that it's going to have to react unexpectedly? And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be able to observe, not interact with nature. So I went there to become a student of wildlife, and they walk you through the full gamut of understanding their environment, their behavior, the little mannerisms, the communication. I mean, they have umpteen ways they tell you they are irritated if you know what you're looking for. And then, of course, each species, you need to react differently when you see those signs. So the education was absolutely invaluable, and I've used it so many times, every time I'm on the ground with bears, and it just keeps reinforcing itself. You see those similarities, and it doesn't matter where you're traveling to. You see the things transition from one species to another and one situation to another. It's fascinating.
I'm trying to remember, and for the life of me, the name is not coming to me. I spoke to him probably 3 years ago now. There was a story where he was lying on the floor, zoom lens out ahead of him, his attention fully focused forward, and he didn't notice the cub had appeared behind them. And then you've got the cub with them and the mum across a short strait of water. They're the moments you have to stay still, aren't they? They're the moments you can't panic.
Yeah. And I mean, the more intense the moment, the more you have to fight your instincts, your natural instincts to be alarmed or to be reactive, including a charge. If you're bluff charged by a bear, you need to stand your ground. You need to get together. If it's a grizzly, you'll react differently than a black bear. You know, you may have to charge back at them a couple of steps and be as and be as big and intimidating as possible.
Does that include sort of putting your hands in the air and making noise?
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
Absolutely.
Acting like a bear, in essence.
In essence, yeah. Enough to just break their concentration is what you're trying to do, and make them stop and go, whoa, what's happening? Yeah. Okay, fine, I'll leave. Bears, they really don't want to be aggressive. It's not, they're not looking to fight. Males will fight each other in order to claim dominance in an area for breeding purposes. Yeah. And females will fight to protect cubs if they're feeling threatened. But if you're doing what you're supposed to do and you're not, injecting yourself into their world, they're coming to you, then you're normally in that position where none of that becomes an issue. So.
Except the polar bear, I would imagine. They have their own grumpiness all of their own, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Those are a little different. Yeah. Different rules for them. You definitely want to give them
what are the rules then? Because I've seen incredible pictures of wildlife, of a wildlife cameraman, actually, in one of these protected bear enclosure vehicles. And the bear was pretty close to turning the vehicle over.
Yeah, they're definitely a different species. And again, I mean, I've got to kind of preempt this with the fact that even though I've got my bear guiding, of all the places that I go, I never travel into these places on my own. I am always traveling with another guide that is specific to that area, that knows those bears, that knows those activities, the places. And you become much better at what you're doing and much safer at how you're maneuvering through those places. So in Churchill, for instance, the people I was with have had decades of bear experience, have learned from their parents, because we had an Inuit guide, and he was absolutely incredible to listen to. And I know there are a lot of people that just drive up there, rent a car and go, scout around, get out, walk around, and shouldn't, because the rocks you're walking on are perfect hiding spots for the bears. They just cubby down and you don't know they're there until they sit up. And it's so frightening to see some people get themselves into the positions they get into without even realizing it.
You can tell I'm interested in bears. We don't have any in the UK. None that I've ever met anyway. The photographs in particular where they're standing up and they're looking at you. They're genuinely they look really inquisitive. So I'm wondering whether that's the relationship between us and them, that there is this genuine inquisitive nature that the bear has for us.
Yeah, and that is, I think, the more natural response for bears is just, who are you? What are you doing here? And that's where it's so important for us to be consistent when we're in the field, as far as how you behave and where you go. And that conditioning, those positive experiences and exposures to the wild animals, provides them with an understanding of who we are. And I know, like, there are places in Alaska when we're on the ground on foot, we know that they're coming off from the distance, and we might just hunker down in some tall grass and just sit there and wait. And because we haven't gone out to approach them, we'll have a mom with 3 or 4 cubs just wander right up close to you and even bring them right by you. And then she wanders away and goes to eat while they're just sitting there trying to figure out what you're doing. And they're trying to figure out how their paws work, and they're playing with each other and tackling. And all of a sudden she lays down and they run after her, and she starts nursing right in front of you, like 15 feet from you. And it's just calming for them, because they've been in this situation and they know we're not going to be a threat. They know we're not going to move. We do what we're supposed to do. They do what they're supposed to do. It's incredible.
If mindfulness could work with a quick heart rate, although you might have learned to temper that by now, or tame it, but surely there's that feeling of, because you're never quite sure, are you?
Well, again, like, they do tell you. I know it seems like it's such a crapshoot, and just, boy, good luck. I hope nothing happens. But there really is so much more going on in a moment, and you can tell, if they're comfortable. And this is where, great example, this last trip I had done in Alaska, the guy that we were traveling with, because he's been there year after year, it wasn't just him understanding how one of the female bears would act. It was understanding what she would do if the other one, Big Mama, how she's going to react if Daisy comes into the territory, because they don't like each other. And if their cubs are too close together, she's going to become irritable. So how she reacts to other bears will change if the two are in proximity to one another. And that's not something that you would know unless you had that type of intimate knowledge of that particular group of bears. So it's invaluable to have people like that with you.
It's the Photo Walk show of a Friday. Me with my microphone. I've got my camera. I'm not making many sketchbook pictures today. I should put that right. And you with your cameras, walking and listening to our special studio guest today, who will return very shortly, Jacquie Matechuk. The new newsletter is now available, and because of the way it works with where it's being hosted now, that being Substack, in the winter, I'm looking forward to really making the space a super discoverable one, so that people outside our website space can find us and join our super creative community. It's growing, is Substack. I'm not a new adopter, but reasonably new. And I think it's fantastic. It feels to me like a really friendly space. It genuinely does. So I'm delighted to have our newsletter there. If you'd like to be part of it, if you're already a user of Substack, easy. Look us up on there, The Photo Walk, or go to photowalk.show, our website, and the front page has a joining panel for the newsletter. Right, before part 2 of my conversation with Jacquie Matechuk, a few words from my studio self about Scotland 2025.
So we've just returned from our annual Photo Walk retreat in Scotland, which is a visit now for 3 years I've absolutely adored. The photo walkers I've spent time with, I like to think, will remain as friends long after these adventures we've had. Our chats and our time out with our cameras has been absolutely priceless, and I've enjoyed every moment. I run this with my good friend Lynn Fraser, an extra miler and adventurer with a camera, and each year we've been sure to retain the wonderful spirit of these weeks, whilst just working in some new ideas and places to experience as well. This year, one of our returning photo walkers suggested a word that I think really does sum up the emotion, the tone, and the essence of these really special weeks in Scotland, and that word is senses. Judith McDermott, thank you so much for that, because yes, at that very moment I thought, this is what our weeks have become. And so that's what we're now calling these Scottish retreats, senses. In 2025, we'll continue with the popular parts of the week, like our visits to lochs, our walks along the Blackwater, through the beautiful woodland there, And to engage all our senses on this retreat, we'll do a further creative writing experience through forest bathing with our thoughts. There will be a new sound workshop to discover how our pictures and sounds can work together. We'll talk about storytelling. Plus, we'll have a chat about bringing our photography onto a more tactile plane with bookmaking and zine production during our chats of an evening. We stay in this wonderful part of the Highlands of Scotland on the Black Isle near Inverness, far enough away to make it a true retreat, with railroad and flight links conveniently close to make it easy to find us. The warm barn where we stay has private bedrooms. There's a wonderful nightly meal prepared for us, with an opportunity to share and talk about our work and experiences. The first of our 2 weeks is now completely sold out. The second just has a few places now remaining. So if you do wish to come in 2025, go to photowalk.show, look for the Scottish retreat page and sign up using the form on that page. Scotland 2025. Let's make it a year to discover all our creative senses.
So go to the website photowalk.show. At the top, you'll find a link, Scotland 25. Click on that. It'll take you through to a page where you can apply to be a part of the Senses Week. And I'm looking forward to spending time with you, walking and talking, photographing. Oh, I didn't mention it just a moment ago, but we'll be in the dark room again. That's one of the fabulous parts of the week where we work on producing a print from photographs we make when we walk along the Black Water. It's a sort of opening photographic adventure, I suppose, in that respect. Right, let's return to part 2 of my chat with Jacquie Matechuk. You might have thought I have a particular penchant for stories about photographing bears, and you'd be absolutely right, because part 2 starts with, oh look, a bear.
I'd like you to take me through a couple of awards in particular, the special nature of the pictures you made. Let's start with 2023. And oh, come on, that bear in what looks like a mystical location. It's a beautiful picture. I'll share links, of course, on the show page to it. There's sort of soft foliage around sort of almost vignetting the bear. Tell me about that picture. It's absolutely gorgeous.
That was an incredible experience in Ecuador. We were in the Andes. And that is an Andean bear, or a spectacled bear. Mm-hmm. They're quite endangered. Most people don't realize they are in Ecuador. They assume they're all in Peru. But we had traveled basically to get here. You have to traverse vertically up and down. We camp up top, and then we have to go down into the valley. And it is incredibly vertical. And it's about 900 feet, I would say, about 900 feet down. And then sometimes we have to go back up the other side once we cross the river.
You're mountaineering, essentially.
And you're at 8,000, 9,000 foot elevation. So oxygen's pretty thin while you're trying to do this. But that particular picture, it was... that's Tony. He's a bear that had been coming through the area a lot. We kind of waited. We were a little bit about halfway down. We knew where he was, and that was a favorite tree of his. And he kind of acknowledged that we were there, and he still decided to sort of nest and get comfortable in the tree. So we moved down closer. And as we started moving down, the rain really started to pour. Wow. And it became a huge challenge. Like the equipment was going through a lot, but so were we. We're on mud slopes, and we're slipping and sliding trying to get down, and we finally got settled, and we're huffing and puffing, and we get our gear out, and we're trying to take pictures, and the rain, like I say, is just pouring, but it is hot. You're hot because you came down. Things start fogging up as you're holding them, and because the tree canopy was so thick, I actually had to lower the shutter speed in order to get more light, because we were just starving for light where we were. And that ended up giving sort of that painterly effect, because the rain was pummeling down so hard.
Right, okay.
And I tried a little quicker, and I would go back to a little bit slower on the shutter speeds again. And as I was shooting, I liked the slower ones. And before I knew it, everything started to fog up. So again, it made it even more, for a little bit, you started to see that soft, hazy look, and then it was gone. Like the camera that was it. Had to grab something else and photograph with it instead. But that was, I think, the third last frame is that particular picture. And the rain was pummeling. Like I say, the sun came out for a second and he kind of looked up as though it's like, oh, it's going to break kind of thing. And then he looked right back down and that was it. And it was just such a pretty environment. You really felt, he just looks at peace and he felt just one with nature up there. I mean, how often do you see a bear in that storybook setting?
I know.
And
I know.
It was incredible when the camera completely fogged up and it's like, okay, well, let's see, did I get it? And it's like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful.
I have the privilege of seeing you as we're talking. And of course, on the podcast, my other listener doesn't get that opportunity. But I can see that you're quite emotional about that picture. And I think nature and wildlife does that. How emotional do you get? And do you instinctively know you've got it? And that's probably a very emotive moment in itself, isn't it?
I think so. And it's not so much about, like, I never try and think about, did I get the shot as far as, the right lighting and the technical components. For me, it's, did I get the shot that visualizes what I feel? That's how I photograph. If I can look at that and go, oh, yeah, that's the moment. That's what I see and what I'm feeling sitting here. That's what I want to share with people. So that is my goal when I'm out there, is to try and figure out how to convey what I'm feeling in a moment. And it was the same with sports. It's things that you're feeling. And that's why the connectivity and understanding your subjects is so important, because you can't convey the emotion if you don't understand it.
Well, talking of feeling, because when I saw is 2024, we've got the owl here now. Again, just exquisite. Now we move from what's quite a light picture, even though now I realise it was made while you were struggling to gather any light that you could. But this really is now a very low-key shot. But those eyes, those piercing eyes, again, that must have been, I would imagine, quite an emotional moment where you think, got it, my word, thank you, as you looked at each other in the eyes.
That's so funny. That's exactly what I said before I walked away, was thank you so much. I get to spend a lot of time. The owls are really close by to where I live. Yeah. So I've got names for most of them in the area that I'm used to seeing. And this is one of them. I had only seen him once before. He's a younger male, and he's just really beautiful, though, and an incredible, efficient hunter. When he strikes, he doesn't miss. And he was kind of moving from area to area, and I watched him go into the trees, and he kind of came back out. He went down, picked up a field mouse, went back and ate it. And I was talking to him. He was a little ways away, but just talking to him and thanking him for spending time with me. And he started to fly straight. And then for whatever reason, he turned one more time and looked at me, and for a couple of flaps, and then away he went. And like, my gosh, I've never seen them turn sideways, when they were flying to look before. And oh man, I hope I caught that. And
you did.
As I started flipping through, it's like, oh my goodness. Yeah. And I mean, that's got a lot to do with just good luck too, because that timing is.
Well, I agree with you, but I think we make our own luck as photographers. We put ourselves in the position, don't we?
Yeah.
It's your patience. It might even been the fact that you were talking with him. I don't know.
I don't.
That sort of second look as he looked back and said, "Have you got my best side?"
Yeah. It was a total Zoolander moment, right? Just little bird pucker.
This intrigues me. I was looking at your collections, and I saw that wonderful picture of the Masai Mara elephant. Just a curled trunk. So beautiful. Tusks in the top right-hand corner. A wildlife photograph doesn't always have to be the whole animal, does it? Sometimes the feature of the animal is enough to give you a connection and an understanding of the majesty of something.
I think so. And I think we also really get caught up sometimes on, we picture what we want as an image. And if we don't get that image, then we didn't succeed. And I don't like to travel with that in mind. I always have people say, what's your perfect shot? What are you looking for? And I don't have an answer. I will not go with an expectation because, in that particular circumstance, they were so close. I didn't have a wide enough angle to be able to capture, I think, what would have been a better story as far as an environmental look. So you take what you have and you make the best of it. You look for the moments that capture, again, something that you feel. And for me, that trunk is like a lifeline for them. Mm-hmm. Their entire survival is surrounded by what they can do with that trunk, from communicating to eating to their touch, their sense. It's everything. So being able to take a moment and just focus on that, because that's the lens I had in my hand. That's what I'm going to do the best with I can, and I ended up really loving that particular image.
I understand entirely what you mean about the trunk. I've been lucky enough to be close enough to an elephant to have had a trunk laid on my shoulder. And whilst I thought it was going to pummel me into the ground or something, it wasn't that at all. It was a connection. It's very soft. It was an extraordinary moment that I don't think I'll ever forget. So I know exactly what you mean by that.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I mean, their dexterity and how gentle they can be 1 minute and then rip a tree out of the ground the next.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't thinking about the tree being ripped out of the ground at that particular moment. I think of many of your pictures, and maybe you think of it this way as well. I think of them as portraits, that they are portraits of the animals. In particular, the Watchman. That's a portrait. For me, a beautiful portrait. Again, I'll link to it.
See, for me, that was another really emotional experience. We had some quality time with these gorillas, and they had come into where we were sitting as a group, and we ended up being a bit surrounded by them. And because of how they were moving, and you have some limited lines of sight, I had asked one of the rangers that were with us, can we go up on this side, because I can't see the young ones anymore. They've kind of moved out of sight. And he said, yeah, for sure. So he took me over to the side, and we kind of hunkered down, just the two of us. And I had this beautiful view of this little tiny 3-month-old gorilla that was just, I had mom's arm and little babies sitting there playing with things. And all of a sudden, this other arm reaches down as I'm looking through the lens from the top. So I pull my face away to look, and it's like, it was, I'm guessing, a big sister or brother, something like that, sibling. And sibling taps the little one on the back, and the little one kind of wobbly turns around to see what just touched him. And then the arm pokes it on the other side and taps him on the back again. He turns around wobbly, trying to figure it out. And I'm just killing myself looking at this, thinking, my goodness, what a neat social interaction. And then I hear a big crack off to the side. And I looked over and didn't see anything, and kept photographing, this mom and baby, and then really heard a big crack. And I turned again and looked, and I whispered to the ranger, I'm like, we're not alone. And he says, nope, we're not. And I said, do you see him yet? And he says, nope. And I said, okay. So we just sat there, and we both were watching to see. And all of a sudden, that moment, like this face pushed through the leaves.
Pushes through, right.
And peeked out at us. Yeah. And it was one of the second in command, silverbacks. And I took the picture because it wasn't a black and white, but that dark, intimate moment, that's kind of how it felt. It's like, oh my gosh, we're being watched. Yeah. And then within, I would say 2-3 minutes, he pushed through the bush and presented himself, and then came right past us and literally brushed by my arm and just kept going. And it was, I could feel, and my heart right in my throat. Sure. That's all I could hear in my ears was like, oh. And the ranger had his hand on my shoulder, and he just kept saying, don't move, don't move. I said, don't worry, I'm good. And he went right by, a little brush, and it's like, oh, I was just squealing. I was so happy.
That was a I'm here moment. I'll brush past you, just let you know. And I know my eyes are on you.
Yeah, he wandered right behind us, curled around, ripped a tree out of the ground, started gnawing on it. And it was like, wow. This is crazy. I love it.
This is probably a good time, actually, to talk about ethics. It's a very important part of wildlife photography, especially regarding the impact on animal behaviour and natural habitats. How do you approach that to make sure that your footprint is as ethical as it can be and is environmentally appropriate as it can be, so that you're not changing the world that you're in? Inevitably, you're going to, slightly. Of course you're going to. But how do you make sure that that's not too much of a shift?
There's a couple of different things. First of all, what you do with your imagery matters. And for me, there are definitely some photographers that I look up to, and I'm sure we'll come across that later. And some of the elements that I really respect and appreciate in these particular photographers is that their driving force behind what they do isn't to sell prints. It's not for notoriety. It's simply to drive change. And whether that be a policy change on a government level, whether that be funding for a nonprofit, or to protect more of the areas that these animals live in, that is a greater cause. That is a calling as far as I'm concerned. So to me, that would sort of be the ultimate pinnacle to reach, is to actually be able to have your images move people to that level. So I think if you're photographing with that larger goal in mind, you're going to come out with the images that speak on behalf of your subjects and where you're traveling to. And I think that's really important. The other thing is who you're traveling with. So, there are groups and guides and people that you can travel with or go visit these places with that will do it ethically, that have a reputation specifically for doing it for that purpose. And there are others that will bait, that will, make the photo opportunity happen, that will guarantee a sighting. That's a big flag for me. I'm not going to someone that guarantees wildlife, because that's not what wildlife does. There are good chances, better chances with certain people, but never guarantees. So I think that falls on us ethically. And that, again, that's transition from my sports side. I've always photographed with a very strong ethical background, and that served me really well, even in questionable circumstances where I had to say no to a client and risk that contract because it just didn't sit well with me until I knew that the athlete was okay with what was happening. I look back at that moment and think that's something I'm really proud of. Even if it had cost me the contract, that was a worthwhile decision. So that's transitioned into the wildlife side of things as well. We need to be thoughtful and protective of what we're cherishing. Otherwise, it won't be there to continue to learn from and study and share with the world. And even with Adventure Canada, for instance. So it's a great vessel that offers these expedition travels where you're experiencing not just wildlife and nature, but you're experiencing these cultures and how they have integrated over generations with the areas that they live in. And it's a vessel that also provides an opportunity to have zero emissions, zero footprint with a monetary contribution. So, well, yes, I do get paid to be there. I always cover my own tracks. And for me, that's just what I can do. And I'm grateful that that's being offered by them. And I will do that every opportunity I have to try and offset my footprint when I'm out there.
And Jacquie returns for the final part of our conversation shortly. And, well, actually, sooner than that, as you're about to discover. We have a brand new assignment for the month of November. This month, it's an assignment set by our good friend Lynn Fraser, who actually set this as we walked along the coast in Scotland during the recent Scottish retreat. But also, the other night, when I recorded my chat with Jacquie, my guest today, when it came to recording an assignment for the future months, she chose the same word as our friend Lynn. At the time, I'd forgotten momentarily that Lynn too had chosen this word, but actually it's turned out, I think, to be a super double act. And we've not done it this way before, so why not? You will hear both Lynn and Jacquie now with their takes on why they've chosen the word about to be revealed.
The Photo Walk assignment.
So my word is connection. It's a word that crops up frequently when we're talking about photography, and I think it's a word that's very open to interpretation. So you can look at it from a literal angle, or you can look at it from a metaphorical angle. And I think it's particularly pertinent in the last 2 weeks because we've made connections with new people on the retreat, which has been lovely. So my thoughts on the assignment were that you could maybe show a relationship between people and or an object or different objects, perhaps a spark between yourself as a photographer and the subject.
Can you think of one of yours? What's a connection picture that you can think back in the last year, maybe with all your trips you've done in various places?
I took an image of one of the girls when we went to visit the Arbori tribe, and she stared right down the lens of the camera, right into my soul, and I feel that's a really strong connection there that was formed between the two of us during that portrait.
Well, maybe we can use that one on the assignments page to demonstrate that perfectly.
I would have to say connection.
So why? And how does that connect to your work and how you approach your subjects?
For me, the connection comes with my subjects. And in order to create connection, I need to be invested in them. I need to understand them. I need to respect them. I need to know them. I think that would be an assignment I would be excited to see in a visual response is, what has made you feel connected? And that could be connected to them. It could be connected to the moment. It could be connected to a past experience, but something that really has stirred your soul, made you feel something deeply. And if you can turn that into a moment, a frozen frame, you're going to have an immense success and I think feeling of accomplishment just within your own world.
So good luck with your assignment pictures. Send them to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. No borders, no watermarks. One image, please. Do send links. That's an important part of this, if you want to, of course. Do send me links to your Instagram or your Vero or your website, Flickr perhaps, so that we can link back to your work more generally. And if you can put a few words about, you don't have to, because yes, I can see you looking at me now saying, but Neil, the pictures, they talk for themselves. So they do. You're absolutely right. But if you do want to write a few lines, some thoughts, not lines, that sounds very schooled, doesn't it? Lines. Oi, you, lines. What did I used to get all the time? I think it would have been something. I must listen better. I must stop chattering. And anyway, I'm digressing just a little bit. So do send me links, and we'll have the winner for last month's next week, if that's okay with you. So, the third part of my chat now with Jacquie Matechuk. This third part, I think, is the part where inspiration becomes the theme, although I think we've had a reasonably large serving spoon of it already so far. But here's part 3 of my conversation with my guest today, Jacquie Matechuk.
You mentioned that there were photographers that you're inspired by, that you hope one day people will be able to look at your pictures and feel as inspired and moved by your photographs. And I think certainly now we've heard just 3 stories really, a gorilla and our owl and the bear. I mean, they're all perfect examples of how you can feel moved by a picture. I know I was. Who are those photographers? I'm intrigued who you look up to.
Wow. One gentleman I met actually at the Nature Photographer of the Year event in 2023 in Amsterdam, and he was one of the judges. His name is Jon Delamala, and he does a lot of work for UNESCO, and his pictures and his content have been purchased and published by them and are helping establish protected areas, to the tune of millions of acres. And really showing our impact on nature, but also sharing the good stories, where there are communities that are making changes and advancements and finding ways to coexist and even thrive on both sides. And I am deeply respectful of not only the quality work he does, but his directives and his purpose in life. So he's someone that I absolutely love to follow. It is a little bit different. It tends to be a little bit more on the documentary side than, picture perfect print side, but very powerful. And obviously, my good friend Michelle Valberg, I don't even know where to start with her. Clearly, she's such an accomplished wildlife photographer and photographer in general. But who she is as a person, that's what absolutely wins me over. She's just so genuine and compassionate and just truly happy to share things with people and wants the best for people, for the places we go to, for the animals that we see. She's the kind of person, as many times as she has seen some of these species of animals, when we have a good interaction, I mean, we are fist pumping and screeching and hollering and celebrating. Like, you just love to be with someone that can do this at that caliber for so long and still have that level of appreciation. I don't know that there are a lot of people in life that can live at that level or get to live at that level for so long. And that's just, it's so inspiring to be around.
Michelle's become my guide on different species of fox that I didn't know previously existed. There's a big hole in my wildlife education. Something that you both have in common is this ambassadorial approach to wildlife and wildlife photography. That's important, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we kind of get a kick out of being together, because obviously she's that other brand and I'm Canon. So it is.
You are allowed to say the other brand. It's not like the Voldemort of cameras.
Well, maybe. I'll leave that to you. But we have a lot of fun with that. And it's worked out. I'm hoping that we can collaborate on a trip together as well, because last few times we've been out somewhere, there have been people with us that have both different products, and we've kind of been able to each help in our own area of specialty. Because of course the manufacturers have a lot of differences from one camera body to another. So helping people out with them is always a challenge when it's not your forte on a certain brand. But yeah, any chance I have to go anywhere with her, the answer is always going to be yes. Always going to be yes.
I was looking at the incredible journeys that you make. You've just come back from one, actually, and it always seems that another thing that you and Michelle have in common is trying to bolt you down to a time, because I'm just off there, or I'm just flying there, or I'm just moving there, I'm going to be in the Arctic, and I'm thinking, why can't I have a life like that? But preparing for these trips, I think there's probably, how do you prepare mentally as well as physically for expeditions that involve, some of them are long periods of time that you're spending, and you're going to places that are extremely cold or extremely hot?
Yeah, quite often. I notice that. I'm trying to get more hot than cold now. The older you get, the more enjoyable that is.
But how do you cope with that?
It doesn't feel fair to say cope. It's just, I guess maybe because it's still so new for me, it just feels like literally a dream come true. Yeah. To be able to go to so many different places and take it all in.
I bet.
And I, in some ways, feel like a little kid just sponging it up, and it just cannot come fast enough and soon enough. And I can't get enough of it right now. And I almost feel panicked to try and fit it all in. So I don't know if it's so much coping. I have a lot of support from home. Oh my goodness, so tolerant. Both my husband and my son have been huge supporters right from the get-go. The very first time I had a Zoom call with Canon, and it didn't go well. And I was just so deflated. I thought I really screwed up the chance of a lifetime. And a few hours later, I heard back from them and had my second chance. And then the opportunity to do a collaboration with them was offered, and to do the Canadian component of the global launch on the R3. And of course I said, yes, this is great. And I hung up the phone and went, oh my God, what did I do? I'm so in over my head right now. And it was just this moment of panic. And it was them that, reminded me of all the things I've told them over the years about where they were in life. And, you've earned the right to be here. You're exactly where you should be. And you're here for a reason. And it was funny to see them become my support team, because I've been their support team for all my life. And very grateful for that.
That R3 video was super. If I'm thinking about the right one, which is where it combines the animal and the motorsport, and it brings them together. Very, very clever, particularly at the end.
Yeah, we had a fantastic producer that put that together for us. And like I said, I said yes because it was sort of this opportunity of a lifetime. And then started to think about what they asked for in the period of time. We had to do it with a piece of equipment I couldn't Google. There was no manual. There was nothing. It's like, you're going to get this thing, a few hours before we go out, so you can set it up and away we go. And it's like, wow, am I there yet? Am I in the right realm to be able to pull this off? And we had such a good camaraderie when we were out there traveling to these places, making these moments happen. It just felt so easy and so seamless. So really grateful.
A question I've asked wildlife photographers in the past, and I'd be intrigued to know how you answer this. Have any of the wildlife experiences you've had, I know that you've engaged with them at the time and they've been very emotional. I can see that and understand that from our conversation today. But have they changed the way that you see yourself now? Has it changed? I know changing your life sounds such a grand statement, but has it?
Oh, I think without question. I think every time I'm going out behind that lens, I'm changing a little bit. And one of the things I've had the privilege of talking and sharing with people over the last year has been less about the technical aspects of photography and more about the emotional aspects. For me, I think we have a lot of healing that can come from the time we get to distance ourselves from day to day, from family, from work, from pressures, from news headlines, just everything, and lose ourselves. Just allow ourselves to completely surrender to something that is so out of mind for us normally, out of sight and out of mind. And I think if we have gone through things in our lives, and who hasn't, honestly, gone through some deep pains and tragedies and struggles, that's a place where you can really, I think, find a way to transition them. All the things that you've gone through that have brought up all the emotions and stirred those deep thoughts and feelings in your very soul. They can help you now. You can tap into that deep connection and those sentiments, and you can find ways to release them positively and transition them into something beautiful. And I think if more people did that, they would maybe find a deeper love for the time behind a lens. So that is my new mission, is to try and help people recognize that it needs to be more than just a job. It can be so much more. It's not just about deadlines and deliverables and contracts. If you go find the beauty of it, the thing that got you to pick up that camera in the first place, nobody else will do that for you. It's really important that you go find that for yourself. And if you do, then there's no shelf life on this for people.
Jacquie, I wish I could pick those words up and put them all on one bumper sticker.
That's a big bumper.
But I think it does. It encapsulates perfectly why people pick camera, or I'm never sure whether I should use the word should, but why they, when you pick a camera up, the way you should feel.
Yeah, and it's going to be different for everybody. I think we all walk different paths, and our journeys to where we are now have come from very different roads. But I think we can't necessarily change or affect the experiences we go through, but we can definitely control how we deal with them and what we do with them. And I think this is such a positive outlet. You think of all the vices people can turn to cope with things and how negative they can be on us. This has got to be one of the most powerful and positive options out there. And it's just such a healthy way to reconnect and find beauty and offset all the negative or all the tough things that have happened in your life and just fill that cup, and feel content again.
While we're philosophizing then, Charles Darwin said, "The love for all living creatures is the most notable attribute of man," which is a bit of a utopian belief, sadly, in so many places, isn't it? Because we do so much damage to this world. But do you, and again, it's a question I ask because I'm hoping that one day somebody's going to give me the answer I really want. Do you have hope? is in looking after the planet. You know, when our leaders sometimes refuse to believe that there's something that, you know, they're blowing enough hot air to blow another hole in the ozone layer, but they're not doing anything about it. And it's down to photographers like you to deliver the message and show what we're doing to this planet. That's a responsibility, actually, that photographers like you bear. But do you have hope?
I absolutely have hope. I am filled with hope. When I had an opportunity to spend some time with Jane Goodall, and just to sit and listen to her talk and explain her points of view, there are so many beautiful and good things that are happening around the world, and people like her, and of course people not maybe as notable as her, making little decisions every day, whether that be that you started recycling at home, or, you know, you're carpooling once a week. It could be a little tiny decision that really does have a big impact. And I think with all the gloom and doom that happens out there and that we photograph, you know, from a conservation side of things, I think it's very important that we share those good stories too, because just like you say, you know, when you see that so much damage has been done and there's so much hurt to our planet, you don't want to fill people with even more, you know, overwhelming sense of what's the point. They need to have something to latch on to that makes them feel like, yeah, we got a shot. This is worth fighting for. So outside of just the images of these beautiful animals, which you hope that inspires, there's also, you know, being able to document the work being done by some of these NGOs and these conservation groups, and share those stories that show people engaged with our culture, with our wildlife, with our Mother Earth, and show what they're doing and what they're capable of. Because I think it comes across sometimes, and that was something I was really conscientious about when I wanted to move to this conservation side of things, is that a lot of times I think our photography, and we look like we're coming down on people, you know, on our soapbox preaching, you know, you've got to make a change. You've got to do this better. And it sounds like, you know, you're punishing people for not doing enough, and you can't engage people that way. We need the olive branch first. We need to give them a reason to listen before we start preaching. So I think if we can share, you know, some of those beautiful stories of progress, and especially with these generations coming up, like their appreciation and respect and drive to pick up where we may have dropped that ball is so inspiring. They see the world and respect the world in a very different way. And I think there's a lot of positive that can come out of that. So with any luck, we can pass that on and just encourage them to keep doing what they're doing. My
son, Jacquie, often reminds me of exactly what you've just said. He says, "Don't worry, Dad, we'll clear up your mess." Thank you, Jack. That's very kind of, yes, absolutely. What projects are you working on? What exciting things are coming up for you?
Well, I've been corresponding with the Spectacled Bear Conservation Group out of Peru, and they have a potential massive project within the next couple of years planned. So I'm extremely hopeful that I can be a part of that and help see some of that policy change that I was talking about earlier, which would be exciting. A lot more travel coming down the pipe, obviously, as far as taking people out and really trying to provide some photographic tours that not just give people great photo opportunities, but where we can really learn and understand about what we're photographing, what these animals and these places need from us, what people can do as photographers to provide impactful imagery, and how to share that imagery, how to share the moments and the stories, because so much happens on, you know, when you go on a tour and you're submerged into this experience, and you come back and you might share 10 pictures, but there was a lot that happened between those 10 images. And those are where the real stories are. So encouraging people and sharing with them ways to put that out there so people can feel more connected to the whole experience. And that responsibility we talked about as far as being a photographer, you know, we can pass that down to other people that we're going out with, because everybody that is there, that is feeling something in those moments, now has a voice and now has an opportunity to be part of that beautiful change that we're trying to create. So that's my hope.
Jacquie, I have one more question for you. And it's a question I ask of all my guests now. What's your why? You may have answered it a little bit with that wonderful bumper sticker answer. But and if I can sell enough of those bumper stickers, I'm coming out on your next journey.
I would love that. Oh my God.
What's your why?
You know, for now, the why would be change. It's being invested enough and sharing enough with other creatives and inspiring enough people to really feel what we've experienced when we're out there and to care just that little bit more. Like it takes something special to move people to action. It's one thing to recognize, to see something and appreciate it. It's another thing to see something and feel it to the extent that it's going to change something you do. And it's actually going to inspire you to make a different decision or to go a different route. So for me, that's a big thing. And not just within my circle, but as a Canon ambassador, I do get to travel and speak more and more. So in particular with the younger crowd, one of the things I've been able to do the last 3 years is work as a mentor with the Futures program, which Canon does each year. They select a group of students and we move them through. We have a bunch of mentors, all different ambassadors within the Canon family. And we spend time with these kids. We give them projects, and it could be anything that covers elements from mental health to how to put together a project deck and pitch a proposal to marketing, running your business, how to find, pick up that creativity when you hit that lull. It's a little bit of everything, just letting them know that they're not alone. And then for them, to be able to relive all of this through their eyes, it just keeps re-inspiring me. I see things differently because I see it for the first time over and over and over again. And that just generates so much more excitement and appreciation for where I am. So I think every time I'm going through changes and learning more things and experiencing more things, it keeps redirecting my whys and it keeps redirecting my journeys. And I hope it doesn't change. I hope it just continues to evolve and grow.
And my sincere thanks to Jacquie Matechuk for being my guest this week. I had a wonderful conversation. It's a real privilege, doing this. To be able to talk with photographers like Jacquie, to be able to ask the questions that I want to ask. It is a real privilege. It genuinely is. And that's it for today. If you can't wait until next Friday and you want to walk a little further together, then the Extra Mile edition number 112 is waiting for you. The Extra Mile is part of our private Patreon channel supported by our wonderful community that I call Extra Milers each week. There's an extra show, you see, which often features our community as stars of the show. And one of those community members is a dear, dear friend of mine, Giles Penfound. You know Giles, don't you? Yes, of course I know Giles. I've broken Garibaldi's with him before, have you? Oh, okay. I'd like you to ask yourself the following question. Imagine the feeling. You've just booted up your computer, and you think, right, I need to just grab a couple of things off the archive, then back it up. 25 years of photographic work is at your fingertips. Only it isn't. Because somehow your drive and your backup is now no longer seeing your archive of 25 years, a quarter of a century's worth of digital pictures. You've lost the whole darn lot. Today, a story about that, but a story about a refreshing new start. Now, only a month back, Giles Penfound, my dearest photographic friend, supporter and mentor, was my walking guest. And we talked about work that he's about to reveal, maybe no longer. But for this week, our Extra Miler ears will have a sort of, I think, Phoenix from the Ashes story in many respects. It's a fresh start story, following a moment of absolute, well, I don't think surprise adequately describes it.
On this week's Extra Mile.
I said I've lost 25 years worth of work. And I don't know if anybody can remember those wonderful Looney Tunes cartoons or whatever, where you'd get the Tasmanian devil stood in one corner and in the other you'd get a rabbit or an animal cowering in the other. Well, it was like that. So, but I was stood there, my family was not cowering because they're not afraid of me, but they were going, "Are you all right?"
Were the two girls and Nick there?
Yeah. And
So it was like a whole family meeting.
and the look of incredulity on their faces was,
Right.
and they went, "You're right." I mean,
Well, you'll find out exactly what he did say to a room of open-mouthed members of his family on the Extra Mile show today. If you'd like to hear this and over 100 other Extra Mile episodes and the more episodes, and there were some other things in there as well, then go to photowalk.show, click the yellow-orangey button at the top, and you'll learn how to join us on those extra miles. Now, there's no PS this week. I think the show's playout song I'm about to play is the postscript. I did say it was a start, middle and end today, and it certainly is. The song I've chosen speaks to three stories in the show today, or actually one more toward the news in the world at the moment. Number one, it speaks to Giles, my dear friend Giles, and how he's rising again with a new life project after losing 25 years of his digital photographic archive. So that's one. Number two, this speaks to the story of hope, I think, for our climate, for our wildlife, and how we can and do make a difference, which is pertinent, yes, to today's show. And three, I think it speaks to the week ahead. And I can't lie, I've had some personal anxiety about this. Now, I know we don't generally talk politics on the show, bar the odd quip, unless, of course, our guests specialise in that genre. And we've had a few of those, including Nelson Mandela and President Obama's personal photographers. Over half of those who listen to this show are in America, so you're a very important part of this community. I like to think our community has forged a good few friendships in America. Of course, there's a rather important vote happening over the coming days, you might have noticed, but not just for US politics. I think the world this time is watching somewhat more studiously than perhaps it ever has before, and I'm trying desperately not to nail any colours to a mast at this moment, particularly in that I'd surely feel a reprimand from many corners saying, "This is not your business. You're usually impartial, Neil, so kindly remove a Votre-sized ninth from the conversation," he says in uncomfortably bad Del Boyese, and reverting to some semblance of humour to try and disguise his discomfort. But I do feel a sense of discomfort. And maybe it's the fact that I've just had another birthday that's blessed me with a small b, with a further short grey whisker or three of perhaps a little more enlightenment. But I have a dream, and ask not what your country can do for you, are speeches that do seem so far removed from public discourse at the moment, and I do think it's put a great many people on edge. I feel a sense of anxiety, even if the shores of America, for me, are many hours of flight away. I do live in a bit of utopia, I have to say, in my mind that is, and I can't understand why we can't work together. I'm a very simple soul, really. So the song you're about to hear is very, 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 underline the very, unlike any play-out song I've chosen before. Although when I listened to it, when I was trying to make a choice of what the play-out song would be this week, this one struck me as, well, perfect. And just how potent the message was for all three of the stories I mentioned a moment ago. The lyrics, they really spoke to me. Let me read a few. A picture can be framed, but every eye will see a different view. Compassion, empathy, open heart. I know it's hard. Some march on the boulevard, some build, some pull apart. Some blame, some do their part. Bring light when we're in the dark. So yes, my play-out song today is from EV. It's called Rise Again. Now, I'm not so good at this serious stuff. And I'm not sure, though I hope it doesn't, that this might just sound a little insincere or perhaps even trite. I can't make speeches like JFK or Martin Luther, but my hope is, and it truly is, genuinely, my hope is for peace in the coming week and for far more enlightened, compassionate thinking from whatever corner you find yourself in. Let's walk together again next week, shall we?
Break down my walls, but I will rise again. 'Cause I stand tall in my environment. How could I ever close my eyes and stay silent since they try to take me down with their violence? So when I see my people fight off the evil, just know this ain't new. A picture can be framed, but every eye will see a different view. So when I hear the chants, when I hear the screams, when I see the horrible scenes, when I see the horrid things coming from human beings, I pray one day a new way will take over. What it's like to breathe life in a coma. We're so blind to the pain of the other, we must see beyond me in the struggle. Break down my walls, but I will rise again, 'cause I stand tall in my environment. How could I ever close my eyes and stay silent since they try to take me down with their violence? Compassion, empathy, open heart, I know it's hard. Some march on the boulevard, some build, some pull apart, some blame, some do their part. Bring light when we're in the dark, stuck between a rock and a hard place. Scarred face, burnt arms, it's alarming how we can't hold space for multiple truths, multiple hues. Talking about vacuums, sucked into the social chat rooms. Discuss and discuss, but ain't taking no action. Thinking that you know, but it's only a fraction. How you get the answers without asking? The math ain't math. Break down my walls, but I will rise again, 'cause I stand tall in my environment. How could I ever close my eyes and stay silent since they try to take me down with their violence? So many persons hurting, but they still put the work in, and you can't try and chase things that are more uncertain than they've ever been. Submersion to open seas. Look at all these vets with PTSD, zero discernment, to decipher the codes, thinking you know. Easy to eat the apple from the serpent. Media servant, regurgitate these words for what purpose? What purpose? Are you adding more fuel to the flames? Will this bring change? Will this sustain? Or will this be another stain that adds to the pain? Break down my walls, but I will rise again, 'cause I stand tall in my environment. How could I ever close my eyes and stay silent since they try to take me down with their violence? Break down my walls, but I will rise again, 'cause I stand tall in my environment. How could I ever close my eyes and stay silent since they try to take me down with their violence? But I will rise again.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.